The Great Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled like a field of stars. Floating platforms held representatives from over 300 advanced civilizations, each race considering themselves masters of space and time. Light from the three suns of the Council world streamed through the crystal dome, creating rainbow patterns across the assembled beings. Dr. James Walker stood on the lowest platform, his simple blue Earth uniform looking plain among the exotic dress of the alien representatives. He held his head high despite the whispers and subtle pointing from the gathered species. At 60 years old, his gray hair and weathered face showed the marks of a lifetime spent pursuing humanity's dreams of reaching the stars. The Human Federation presents its application for full membership in the Galactic Council, the Master of Ceremonies announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. They wish to demonstrate their worthiness through their latest achievement in dimensional physics. A ripple of amusement passed through the gathering. The Archons, crystalline beings who floated on their platforms without any visible support, shifted their colors in what Walker recognized as their version of skeptical interest. Walker cleared his throat and pressed a button on his wrist device. A hologram appeared above his platform, showing complex mathematical equations and diagrams. Honored members of the Council, humanity has completed theoretical research into seventh-dimensional space travel. Our calculations show. The laughter started softly at first. It began with the Archons, their crystal bodies chiming like bells as their colors shifted to bright yellow, their expression of amusement. Then the laughter spread, growing louder as more species joined in. Some used vocal cords, others telepathic projections of mirth, and still others expressed their amusement through color changes or pheromone releases. Order. The council leader, an ancient being made of pure energy contained within a ceremonial vessel, called out, but even their voice held a note of amusement. Let us hear the humans. Theoretical research. Walker stood straighter, continuing despite the interruptions. Our research shows that conventional understanding of dimensional travel is incomplete, while fifth-dimensional travel, as mastered by the honored Archons, allows movement through probability spaces, the seventh dimension offers. Amusing, the lead Archon's voice rang like crystal bells through the chamber. Their body shifted to a patronizing shade of blue-green. The primitive three-dimensional species believes it can comprehend what took us millennia to master. Tell us, human, have you even successfully built a fifth-dimensional probe? Walker's face remained neutral, though his hands gripped his datapad tighter. We believe that skipping certain dimensional stages is possible with the right. More laughter erupted. A tentacled being from the outer rim actually fell off their platform in their hysteria, having to be rescued by their anti-gravity belt. Perhaps, another Archon chimed in, their tone dripping with condescension. The humans should first master basic space travel before theorizing about dimensions they can barely comprehend. They still use primitive fusion drives for their colony ships. The council leader raised their energy form, creating a brief silence. Dr. Walker, while we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, the council requires more than theoretical research for membership consideration. Return when you have achieved practical results in at least fifth-dimensional technology. We suggest focusing on more achievable goals for now. Walker bowed slightly, his expression unreadable. Thank you for your consideration, honored council. Humanity looks forward to surprising you with our achievements. There was something in his tone, a subtle confidence that made a few of the more perceptive council members pause in their mirth. As Walker's platform descended to the exit level, the laughter and jokes continued above him. He pulled out his secure communicator, making sure it was shielded from any monitoring devices. A text-only message appeared on its screen. MVBIUDIS Dawn, Final Systems, SHAXE, complete. Awaiting your return. Tarixi Tor read. Walker allowed himself a small smile as he walked toward his ship. Let them laugh. In less than a week, the galaxy would learn that humanity's theoretical research was anything but theoretical. And the laughter would stop very, very quickly. 3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean, Director Anna Reed walked through the gleaming corridors of humanity's most secret facility. Her footsteps echoed off the polished metal walls as she made her way to the main observation deck. At 45, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had dedicated her life to proving impossible things possible. The quantum engineering complex was officially a deep-sea mining operation. In reality, it was home to Project Mobius, humanity's greatest technological achievement. Reed smiled, thinking about the Council's laughter. If they only knew what lay in the massive chamber ahead. She pressed her hand against the biometric scanner, and the 20-foot-tall doors slid open silently. The observation deck offered a perfect view of the enormous construction bay below. There it was, the Mobius Dawn. The ship didn't look impressive at first glance. It was smaller than most space cruisers, only about 300 feet long. Its hull seemed to shift and blur, as if the human eye couldn't quite decide what it was seeing. The surface appeared both matte black and mirror bright at the same time, a visual contradiction that gave many observers headaches. Director Reed, Commander Thomas Hayes called out as he approached. He was 35, with steady hands and the calm demeanor needed for someone about to pilot humanity's most advanced vessel. Dr. Walker's transmission just came through. The Council reacted exactly as we expected. Reed nodded, her eyes still fixed on the ship. Of course they did. Arrogance makes for an excellent blindfold. She turned to Hayes. How did the final systems check go? Perfect, Hayes replied, pulling up a holographic display from his wrist computer. The seventh dimensional core is stable. The consciousness interface is responding better than we hoped. Those cave paintings your team discovered in Australia were the key we needed. Reed watched as technicians swarmed around the ship like busy ants. The ancient cave paintings had been humanity's greatest secret, complex mathematical formulas disguised as primitive art, waiting thousands of years to be rediscovered when humans could finally understand their meaning. The Archons think they're so advanced with their fifth-dimensional travel, Reed said, shaking her head. They never understood that skipping dimensions isn't impossible. It's necessary. You can't truly grasp the seventh dimension until you stop trying to understand it through the lens of the lower dimensions. A soft alarm chimed, and both of them turned to watch as the ship's outer hull began its daily calibration cycle. The surface rippled like water, occasionally showing glimpses of spaces that shouldn't exist, angles that made no sense to three-dimensional minds. The first test pilots went mad, Hayes said quietly. They tried to understand what they were seeing instead of letting their consciousness adapt naturally. Reed placed a hand on his shoulder. That's why you were chosen, Thomas. You don't try to force understanding. You accept that some things can be experienced without being explained. Their conversation was interrupted by another alert. Reed pulled up a secure communication screen. Her expression hardened as she read the message. The Archons are mobilizing their fleet, she announced. Multiple ships detected moving toward our outer colonies. They're faster than we anticipated. Hayes straightened his uniform. They mean to put us in our place. Show the primitive humans they shouldn't reach too high. Then they're about to learn a hard lesson. Reed turned to face him fully. Commander Hayes, Project Mobius is now officially activated. Report to the consciousness chamber for final preparations. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity has been hiding. Hayes saluted and strode toward the preparation area. Reed watched him go, then turned back to the ship. The Mobius Dawn's hull rippled again, and for a moment, she could have sworn she saw shapes moving in directions that shouldn't exist. She smiled, thinking of the Council's laughter again. Soon, they would understand that humanity hadn't been struggling to catch up to their level of technology. They had long since moved beyond it. The attack came without warning. On 12 human colony worlds, the sky suddenly filled with crystalline ships that seemed to bend and twist through impossible angles. The Archon fleet had arrived, and they had come to teach humanity a lesson about their place in the galaxy. On New Eden, the largest human colony, people stopped in the streets to watch as the alien vessels appeared simultaneously across different points in space. The ships glowed with a blue-green light that hurt human eyes, their crystalline structures allowing them to partially exist in 5 dimensions at once. "They're not even trying to communicate," Governor Mark Wilson said, staring at the tactical displays in the colony's defense center. The room was filled with the sound of urgent alerts and hurried footsteps as military personnel rushed to their stations. "They're just appearing everywhere." The colony's defense fleet, a group of 30 ships equipped with humanity's best conventional weapons, moved to intercept the Archon vessels. Their weapons fired plasma torpedoes, quantum missiles, and gravity bombs. Most passed harmlessly through empty space as the Archon ships simply shifted to a different dimensional phase. On Earth, in the Deep Sea Command Center, Director Reed watched multiple holographic screens showing similar scenes playing out across all 12 colonies. Her face remained calm, but her knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of her console. "They're toying with us," she said quietly, "using fifth-dimensional maneuvers to make our weapons useless, just like they practiced in their simulations." "No doubt." The Archon ships began their response. Beams of crystalline energy cut through human ships like paper. The defense fleet's shields, designed to work in normal space, provided no protection against weapons that struck from multiple dimensional angles at once. New Eden reports 60% of defensive capabilities destroyed. An operator called out. Mars Colony reports total defense grid failure. Europa Station has lost all external communications. Reed pressed a button on her console. "Commander Hayes, status report." Hayes's voice came through clear and steady. "Mobius Dawn is ready, Director. Consciousness interface is stable. All 7th-dimensional systems are operational." "Colony casualties are mounting," another operator reported. "The Archons are systematically destroying our orbital defense platforms. Ground bombardment expected to begin in 15 minutes. Reed took a deep breath. They had hoped to have more time to test the Mobius Dawn, to better understand its capabilities. But the Archons had forced their hand. "Very well. Commander Hayes, you have permission to launch. Show them what humanity has been keeping in reserve." In the massive underwater bay, the Mobius Dawn's surface began to ripple more intensely. Hayes, seated in the consciousness chamber at the heart of the ship, closed his eyes as his mind merged with the vessel's systems. The ancient cave painting formulas, now translated into quantum algorithms, began their work. The ship didn't so much launch as it ceased to exist in conventional space. One moment it was there, the next it had transcended the dimensional boundaries that even the Archons considered absolute. On New Eden, the Archon fleet had finished destroying the last of the orbital defenses. Their crystalline ships moved into bombardment formation, their weapons charging for the final strike against the defenseless human cities below. That's when they felt it, a ripple in dimensions they didn't even know existed. Their sensor crystals registered impossible readings, energy patterns that defied their most advanced theories of space-time. The Mobius Dawn appeared, though appeared wasn't quite the right word. It existed in ways that made the Archons' fifth-dimensional mastery look like a child's toy. It moved through spaces that their sensors couldn't track, existed in dimensional planes they couldn't perceive. "Impossible," the Archon fleet commander transmitted, their crystalline form vibrating with confusion and fear. Their technology was primitive. They hadn't even mastered fifth-dimensional. The commander's transmission cut off as the Mobius Dawn began its first attack run. Humanity's hidden weapon was about to show the galaxy exactly how wrong they had been to laugh. Commander Thomas Hayes had thought he was prepared for what would happen when the Mobius Dawn activated its 7th-dimensional systems. He was wrong. No amount of training could have truly readied him for this moment. His consciousness expanded beyond the ship's control chamber, beyond the boundaries of normal space. He saw reality not as a single flowing stream, but as an endless ocean of possibilities, all existing at once. The ancient cave paintings that had inspired the ship's design weren't just mathematical formulas. They were attempts to describe this very experience. "Status report, Commander Hayes. Director Reed's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Hayes struggled to put the experience into words. It's beautiful, Director. I can see everything. The Archon's fifth-dimensional travel is like crawling compared to this. We're not just moving through space-time. We're existing outside of it. Through his expanded awareness, Hayes could see the Archon fleet around New Eden in a way no human ever had before. Their crystalline ships, so impressive in normal space, looked like crude sketches compared to the Mobius Dawn's true form. They were trying to track his ship with their advanced sensors, but they could only detect fragments, echoes of its passage through dimensions they couldn't comprehend. Multiple Archon vessels attempting to lock onto our position, Hayes reported, his voice steady despite the overwhelming sensations. They're like children playing with blocks, Director. They think they understand higher dimensions, but they only see the shadows. The Mobius Dawn moved in ways that defied conventional physics. It didn't just travel through space. It rewrote the rules of where and how things could exist. The ship's hull, designed using principles found in those ancient cave paintings, adapted to each dimensional shift perfectly. In the command center, Reed and her team watched in awe as their monitors tried to track the Mobius Dawn's movements. Most of their instruments simply couldn't process what they were seeing. The few that could showed patterns that looked like abstract art more than scientific data. The consciousness interface is holding steady, one of the technicians reported. Commander Hayes's mind is fully synchronized with the ship's systems. Brain patterns are unlike anything we've ever recorded, but they're stable. Hayes felt a new sensation through the ship's systems, a pattern of energy building up around the Archon fleet. They're attempting to coordinate their dimensional drives, he reported, trying to create a 5-dimensional cage around us. Should I evade? Reed smiled. No, Commander. Let them try. It's time they learned exactly what they're dealing with. The Archon ships moved into a complex formation, their crystalline hulls resonating in perfect harmony. Energy beams connected them, forming a geometric pattern designed to trap anything up to the 6th dimension. It was their most advanced tactical maneuver, one that had never failed against any opponent. The Mobius Dawn simply shifted, not up or down, not left or right, but in a direction that human language had no words to describe. The Archon's trap might as well have been a paper cage trying to hold a storm. Impossible. The Archon commander's transmission echoed across all frequencies. Our containment field is perfect. No ship can. Your understanding of dimensional physics is flawed. Hayes transmitted back, his voice calm but filled with an authority born of true understanding. You built your theories assuming there were rules that had to be followed. We looked at the same universe and asked why those rules existed at all. Through the ship's systems, Hayes could feel something else. Patterns in the dimensional fabric that matched exactly with the cave paintings. They weren't just instructions for building the ship. They were maps left by ancient humans who had glimpsed this higher reality. Director, he called out, his voice filled with wonder. I don't think we invented this technology. I think we're remembering it. The cave paintings, they weren't just formulas. They were memories passed down through generations, waiting for us to evolve enough to understand them again. In that moment, as the Archon fleet scrambled to comprehend what they were witnessing, humanity's true journey was just beginning. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries to come. Not for its destruction, but for the moment when the galaxy's understanding of what was possible changed forever. The Archon fleet commander sent their ships into complex attack patterns, their crystalline vessels moving through 5 dimensions with practiced grace. Energy beams capable of cutting through planets fired from multiple dimensional angles. In any other battle, it would have been an overwhelming display of power. But the Mobius Dawn wasn't there when the attacks arrived. It wasn't anywhere. At least not in any way the Archons could understand. Their attack patterns are predictable. Commander Hayes reported calmly from within the consciousness chamber. They're thinking in straight lines, even when they move through different dimensions. They never considered that the lines themselves could be changed. Through his connection with the ship, Hayes didn't just pilot the Mobius Dawn. He saw the true nature of space itself. The Archon's weapons, so devastating in normal space, looked like slow-moving streams of light to his enhanced perception. He could see the paths they would take before they were fired. Multiple Archon vessels attempting to surround our position, one of the Earth Command Center operators reported, though their instruments could barely track what was happening. Director Reed watched the tactical displays, which showed only fragments of the battle. Commander Hayes, remember your training. Don't try to fight them on their terms. Understood, Director. Hayes smiled as he felt the ship's systems harmonizing perfectly with his consciousness. Time to show them what seventh-dimensional warfare really means. The Mobius Dawn began to move in ways that made the Archon's tactical computers crash as they tried to calculate its trajectory. It didn't just appear in different places. It existed in multiple states at once, a possibility that the Archons had deemed mathematically impossible. Their weapons cannot harm us, Hayes reported. They're trying to hit a target that exists in dimensions they can't even perceive. It's like trying to shoot a shadow with a rock. An Archon ship fired its main crystal beam, a weapon that could slice through a moon. The Mobius Dawn's hull rippled, and the beam passed through space that contained the ship but somehow didn't. The energy dispersed harmlessly across dimensions the Archons didn't know existed. Impossible. The Archon commander's transmission was filled with genuine fear now. Our sensors show they're in 12 places at once. No vessel can exist in multiple probability streams simultaneously. Hayes felt a moment of pity for them. You never questioned why space had to work the way you thought it did, he transmitted back. You built your understanding on assumptions that were never true. The Mobius Dawn moved through the Archon fleet like a dolphin through waves. Where Archon ships tried to predict its movements, they found empty space. Where they tried to flee, they found it already there. Their mighty fifth-dimensional drives, capable of crossing galaxies, seemed crude and clumsy compared to the human vessel's fluid movements through higher dimensions. Commander, Director Reed's voice came through clearly. A demonstration, I think. Show them exactly what they're dealing with, but keep casualties to zero. We're not here for revenge. Understood, Director. Hayes reached out through the ship's systems, touching the dimensional fabric itself. The Mobius Dawn began to glow with a light that existed in spectrums the Archons had never imagined. In an instant, every Archon ship found itself trapped in a bubble of twisted spacetime. They could move, but only within the confines of their own dimensional limitations. Their mighty engines fired uselessly against barriers they couldn't even detect. What are you? The Archon commander's voice had lost all its previous arrogance. We are human, Hayes replied simply. And we have only begun to remember what that truly means. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over. The mighty Archon fleet hung helpless in space, contained by forces they couldn't understand, while a single human ship rewrote everything they thought they knew about the universe. As Commander Hayes held the Archon fleet in dimensional containment, something unexpected began to happen. The ship's consciousness interface started showing him patterns he hadn't noticed before. The seventh dimension wasn't just about moving through space. It was about something far more fundamental. Director Reed, Hayes called out, his voice filled with wonder. I'm seeing something in the dimensional patterns. The cave paintings weren't just showing us how to build the ship. They were trying to tell us what consciousness really is. In the command center, Reed leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the readings from the consciousness chamber. Explain, Commander. Our ancestors. Hayes paused, trying to put the impossible into words. They didn't just discover seventh-dimensional travel. They discovered that human consciousness itself exists partially in the seventh dimension. That's why the Archons could never access it. They were trying to reach it through technology alone. The Mobius Dawn's hull rippled with new patterns, responding to Hayes's growing understanding. The contained Archon ships watched in stunned silence as the human vessel began to glow with an inner light that seemed to reach into their very beings. The cave paintings showed mathematical formulas. Yes, Hayes continued, his awareness expanding even further. But they were also showing us maps of human consciousness. The spirals weren't just about space travel. They were showing how our minds naturally touch the seventh dimension when we dream, when we imagine, when we create. In their crystalline ships, the Archons began detecting energy patterns that their sensors couldn't classify. It wasn't just coming from the Mobius Dawn anymore. They were picking up similar traces from every human colony, from Earth itself, faint but undeniably present. "Director," one of the technicians called out, "we're getting strange readings from the ancient cave painting sites worldwide. They're resonating with the Mobius Dawn's energy signature." Reed's eyes widened as she understood. All this time, we thought we were building something new, but we were really remembering something we'd always known. Through the ship's systems, Hayes could now see the truth with perfect clarity. The seventh dimension isn't just another layer of space-time. He transmitted, knowing both Earth Command and the Archon fleet could hear him. It's the dimension where consciousness itself exists. Our ancestors knew this. They left us messages, hidden in art that looked primitive but contained profound truths. The Archon commander's voice came through, humbled but curious. How did your ancestors know of such things when they had no technology? Because they understood something you forgot. Hayes replied gently. Technology isn't the only path to understanding. Human consciousness naturally exists partially in the seventh dimension. That's where our creativity comes from, our ability to imagine things that don't exist in normal space-time. The cave paintings weren't instructions for building a seventh-dimensional drive. They were reminders of what we really are. In the command center, Reed watched as new data poured in from research stations worldwide. The patterns in the cave paintings were being found everywhere now, in ancient pottery, in megalithic structures, in indigenous art from every continent. All of them contained the same mathematical principles, the same maps of consciousness, waiting for humanity to evolve enough to understand them again. The Mobius Dawn isn't just a ship, Hayes realized aloud. It's a key to remembering what humanity has always been capable of. We didn't need to build our way up through each dimension like the Archons did. We just needed to remember that we were already connected to them all. As if in response to his words, the ship's consciousness interface deepened, showing Hayes visions of human history that no conventional historian had ever seen. He saw ancient humans, their minds touching the seventh dimension naturally, leaving messages for their descendants. He saw the gradual forgetting as humanity focused on physical technology. And now, finally, the remembering. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity hadn't just proven themselves equal to the advanced races. They had shown that they had been more advanced all along, in ways that technology alone could never match. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. No laughter echoed through its crystal dome today. Representatives from hundreds of advanced civilizations sat in stunned silence as they watched the recordings of the battle between the Mobius Dawn and the Archon fleet. Dr. James Walker stood on the central platform again, but this time there were no whispers of mockery, no condescending glances. Behind him, a hologram showed the Mobius Dawn, its hull shifting through impossible dimensions as it effortlessly contained the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. 1 week ago, Walker began, his voice calm but carrying an authority that filled the vast chamber. This council laughed at humanity's theoretical research into seventh-dimensional travel. Today, we come not to seek membership, but to offer guidance. The council leader's energy form flickered with uncertainty. The Archon fleet, they report experiences that defy our understanding of physics. Physics. Walker smiled gently. The laws of physics as you understand them are like a child's building blocks compared to the true nature of reality. We didn't just build a better ship, we remembered what humanity has always known. Commander Hayes stepped onto the platform beside Walker. His eyes now held a depth that made even the oldest council members feel young. Through his connection with the Mobius Dawn, he could see the seventh-dimensional patterns flowing through the council chamber. through every being present. Your civilizations focused so much on technological advancement, Hayes said, that you forgot to look inside yourselves. The seventh dimension isn't just about travel or power. It's about consciousness itself. Humanity didn't discover this. We remembered it. The Orcian representatives, their crystalline forms dimmed with humility, spoke next. We have reviewed the battle data countless times. Our finest scientists cannot explain what we witnessed. Our most advanced theories cannot account for what your ship did, because you're trying to understand it through technology alone. Walker explained. The cave paintings that guided our project weren't instruction manuals. They were messages from our ancestors, reminding us of what we truly are. Every human carries the potential to touch the seventh dimension within them. The Mobius Dawn simply helped us remember how. Director Reed, joining them on the platform, activated a new hologram. It showed the cave paintings, but now the Council could see the mathematical patterns hidden within them. The maps of consciousness that had waited millennia to be understood again. Humanity offers this knowledge freely, Reed announced, drawing surprised murmurs from the assembly. Not because we seek to prove our superiority, but because we understand now that consciousness itself evolves through sharing, not hoarding wisdom. You would share such power? The council leader asked, their energy form pulsing with disbelief. After our mockery, after the Archon attack. Hayes stepped forward. The seventh dimension showed us that all consciousness is connected. Your laughter, your attacks, they came from ignorance, not malice. To withhold knowledge as punishment would only perpetuate the cycle of limitation. Walker raised his hand, and the hologram shifted to show new images. Training centers being built on Earth, where humans would help other species understand their own connections to higher dimensions. The age of purely technological advancement is ending, he declared. A new era begins today. One where consciousness and technology evolve together, where we remember that the greatest frontiers exist not just in space, but within ourselves. The council chamber erupted not in laughter this time, but in applause. Species that had looked down on humanity now looked to them for guidance. The Archons, humbled but enlightened, were the first to formally request training in seventh-dimensional awareness. As the applause continued, Hayes looked out at the assembled representatives and smiled. Through his enhanced perception, he could already see the patterns of seventh-dimensional awareness beginning to stir in some of them. The galaxy's consciousness was awakening, just as humanity's had. The laughter had stopped, but something far more precious had replaced it: understanding. And with understanding came the dawn of a new age, not just for humanity, but for all conscious beings in the galaxy.